And I'd like to welcome you all to our Thursday 1:30 p.m. session today with the Office of Inspector General. And today we have Jason from the OIG to talk about elder abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. I'm going to go ahead and read our disclaimer before we get started. So give me 1 second. Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to have to share my screen again, Jason, so you may have to reshare it in just a second.
No problem.
But again, thank you. The WildTech DC Senior iPad program, its owners and presenters offer technical assistance, virtual help, well-being information designed for educational purposes only. You should not rely on the information in any applications or topics made by WildTech, including but not limited to mobile device applications and any social media pages maintained by WildTech, its owners or presenters as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or legal advice. I recommend that you have your TVs and cell phones off so you can make sure that we're all able to hear ourselves and the presenter. I always recommend you have a notes next to you or so you can record information and review it for later. And as always, please raise your hand if you have any questions. Again, Jason, if you could introduce yourself and your session for the day, I would appreciate it. But thank you so much for coming on and teaching us more about your topic.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So yes, again, my name is Jason Facci. I am an attorney advisor for the DC Office of the Inspector General's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, and I'm actually detailed on sort of a permanent basis to the District of Columbia's United States Attorney's Office to criminally prosecute the district's elder abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation cases, as well as healthcare fraud matters. So the presentation that I have to you today is on combating abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation in the District of Columbia. I'm here to tell you sort of what those terms mean, how elder abuse is defined under our law, how to recognize signs of abuse, and what to do about it if you or yourself, if you or someone you know becomes a victim of one of these crimes. So I can go ahead and start sharing the PowerPoint if everyone's ready.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, can you see the screen here?
You're good to go, Jason. Thank you so much.
All right. So first, I just want to talk about in general, abuse can come in so many different forms. I think some of the most common forms of abuse that I see are physical abuse, sexual abuse, and financial abuse, which can come in, a whole host of forms as well. So we're going to kind of touch on each of these during today's presentation. But first, just some really glaring statistics that help highlight just how big of a problem elder abuse and exploitation is in this country and in the district. There are 83,000 district residents here that are over the age of 65. About 1 in 10 Americans over the age of 60 will experience some form of elder abuse in their life. One of those forms that I kind of briefly highlighted. Nationally, only 1 in 24 cases of abuse are actually even reported to authorities, which I think really highlights why this is such a huge problem. It's actually elder abuse has become a priority for the Department of Justice, and having people report these cases, prosecuting them, putting resources into this area because it is actually on the rise. And there's a number of reasons why these crimes are underreported. It can be, number one, that the elder involved, the victim, is unaware that they are being taken advantage of, whether financially or in some other form. Perhaps they don't have the means to report this information. And oftentimes it's underreported because elderly victims of these crimes often feel embarrassed that maybe they were, scammed or financially exploited in some type of way, which, is unfortunate. Obviously, as you get older, you feel like, oh, I should have known better. I've lived my whole life, and now now I'm getting scammed. My money's being taken from me, and people might feel embarrassed about that. They might become depressed about it. They don't want to tell their family members or people that are supporting them about this, which can lead to a whole host of problems. Like, number one, it doesn't get reported. There's no The bad actor is not being held, responsible or accountable for their actions here. And really, this can lead to depression on the part of the victims, which can lead to a decline in health as well. So, really, the best advice that we tell people is, if you see something, say something. 60% of abuse and neglect perpetrators are actually family members of the victim. Social isolation is a top contributing factor of exploitation. So this can really happen to anybody, whether you're rich or poor, no matter how smart you are. Um, Anyone can become a victim of these crimes. Actually, just a few years ago, the former director of the FBI and director of the CIA was the victim of a lottery scam, which I'm going to talk about later in this presentation. But he actually fell, victim to one of these scams a few years back. He got he was a little older. He was retired at that point, and after he became a victim of this scam, he actually, started a campaign to explain to people, look, if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. So it just showcases really anybody can be a victim of these crimes. But I think one of the top contributing factors is social isolation. So that's why it's really important to stay connected with family members, friends, in any way possible. So, you don't become, a prime target for somebody who wants to take advantage of you. As I alluded to, elders who have been abused have a 300% higher risk of death. And unfortunately, I've seen this in a lot of my cases where, um, we have an elderly victim who, if they've been exploited or abused, we see sometimes a rapid decline in that person's health over, the next year or two. And that could be because of this sort of depression or anxiety felt being a victim of the crime. Obviously.
Oh, Jason, you went out. Um,
All right. Can everybody see me?
yes, no, can you
All
share your
right.
screen again?
Okay. I'll reshare my presentation here. What I was saying is, if you are, not in a good mental space, that can have an effect on your physical health as well. And lastly, the reasons why seniors are a prime target of financial exploitation is because they make up over 27% of the nation's wealth. You've had your whole life to accumulate, these savings, and these, scammers, these people who want to take advantage. They know that, seniors may have money saved up, and that's why there can be a target sometimes on your back.
Jason, we can't see the screen. It says started screen sharing. I think you have to be in the actual presentation for it to show.
All right, let me see if I can fix that.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. So, before we sort of get into each of these, various forms of crimes, who are we talking about when we're referring to elderly people? Well, it's actually defined in the DC code as a person who is 65 years of age or older. DC has specific statutes that are geared towards the financial exploitation of elderly people, but also vulnerable adults are incorporated into that statute. Vulnerable adult can be any person 18 years of age or older who has one or more physical or mental limitations that substantially impair their ability to provide for themselves. An elderly person can also be a vulnerable adult in some situations. So what I have up on here on the screen is the law that I use to prosecute elder financial exploitation. We're going to sort of start with financial abuse, and I'll go from there. But this is defined under the law as anybody who knowingly or intentionally uses deception, intimidation, or undue influence to obtain the property of another. I'm going to talk a little bit about undue influence on the next slide. But this can come in many different forms. This could be somebody committing theft, forgery, fraud, identity theft of the elderly person or vulnerable adult, or getting somebody to assume a legal obligation on their behalf. So what that means is, for example, if you have a family member who purchases a car but puts it in your name, that is causing a legal obligation to be put on you for the payments of the car, any kind of liability if there's an accident. That can also be a form of financial exploitation. And what is great about this law is we have theft laws in DC and fraud statutes that we use, but the law prescribing theft against elders actually has enhanced penalties. DC has stiffer penalties for crimes that are committed against seniors in order to deter people from engaging in those types of crimes. So I mentioned undue influence. This can be another form of financial exploitation, and this is when basically you feel like you can't say no to the person, and you end up you turn over your property, your money to somebody, but you felt some type of undue pressure where you felt like you couldn't say no. It's defined as mental, emotional, or physical coercion that overcomes the person's free will and act against their own interest. We actually prosecuted one of the first undue influence cases in DC about a year ago. It was a case where a pastor had befriended this elderly woman, and he would pray with her. I think she attended his church, and he convinced her to sign up for a reverse mortgage and to put it in his name, to have the payments go to him. And anytime she questioned this or said she wasn't sure about it, he would say, well, let's just pray together. And they would sing songs together. And he really exerted this religious pressure over her where she trusted this person. He was a pastor, and she didn't realize that she was being taken advantage of until it was too late. But luckily, he was caught and prosecuted and ordered to pay restitution to the money that he did steal from her. Undue influence can also be, we often see this with family members where, if you are relying on a family member to take care of you, to pick up your medication or groceries or things like that, and they then want to borrow money from you or start using your property, using your home, you might feel like you can't say no to that because you're afraid that they might stop taking care of you or stop providing that type of care. So this is another form of undue influence, this emotional pressure that can overcome somebody's free will. So what I have on this slide here is a list of the most common scams that we see. I would say that seniors are really one of the biggest targets of these types of scams. Unfortunately, I'm going to touch on each one here. Romance scams are one that's really on the rise. And this is essentially when a person, you might go on a dating website or on social media and meet somebody, but that person may not be who they actually say they are. Unfortunately, somebody was actually recently scammed in the DC Baltimore area of over $700,000, where they met somebody online, they were communicating with them. It might be somebody from another country who wants to meet you, wants to jump into a relationship with you. They may send you some pictures, but it might not really be them. And then one day they ask you, can you wire me some money so I can buy a plane ticket to come and see you? Or, I just lost my job, or I need to pay for some construction, on my home. And they may ask to borrow money at some point. This is often a common, romance scam. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to, protect yourself from these scams in a little bit. But, these types of scams, you're often going to see somebody who wants to, jump into a relationship very quickly. They may be professing their love for you very quickly. If you want to like meet with them or have some type of in-person meeting or even a video meeting, they often come up with excuses why they cannot meet with you. Those are all sort of common red flags that this may be a romance scam. So it's definitely something to watch out for. Tech support scams is another one that's on the rise. This is when, if you're on your computer and all of a sudden you receive a pop-up saying that you have a virus on your computer or your information has been compromised, and to, call this number to have the issue resolved, or somebody may be asking to gain remote access to your computer to remove the virus. This is called a tech support scam. You should never call a number that appears on a pop-up or things like that. That's not how viruses work. If you should always have up-to-date antivirus software on your computer to prevent these types of pop-ups from happening, but never, let somebody gain remote access to your computer where they can then access all of your information. Grandparent scams are another huge one right now. I actually spoke to a detective this week who said he's investigated about 8 of these in the last week or two. And this is when a person poses as a family member, a grandchild, granddaughter, grandson, and may call you and say, they might sound distant on the phone. You maybe can't hear them very well, and they're in some kind of trouble and they're asking for money. That can be like they're in the hospital and they need to pay a medical bill, or they've been arrested and they need money to get out of jail, or they've been in a car accident and they need some money wired to them or sent to them, right away. This is a common grandparent scam. And can you still see the presentation?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, okay. This is a common grandparent scam. And unfortunately, technology is getting so scary to the point where artificial intelligence can be used to copy somebody's voice. So when actually you receive a call, it might sound like, your family member, but it's not. What I've learned also is that these scams are happening most commonly on landlines rather than on cell phones. So if you receive a call from maybe a number that you don't recognize on your landline, and you're hearing this type of information, take a step back and pause for a second and think that whether or not this is actually your family member, or whether it's a scam. It's always a good idea to call back the number that hang up the phone and call back and make sure like everything's okay and that this is the person that they are purporting to be. Government impersonation scams. We see those sometimes. That's where you might get an email or a phone call from somebody claiming to be from the IRS, saying that you did not file your taxes correctly, that you owe a certain amount of money, that you might be arrested if you don't pay this right away. The government is not going to call you like that. The IRS is not going to call you like that. They'll send you, an official letter, if anything. So, just be very aware of government impersonation scams, whether it's by email or by phone. The best course of action in those cases is never give out your personal information over the phone or by email to somebody claiming to be from the government. It's best to just look up the number for, let's say, using the IRS as an example, look up the number for the IRS and call them yourselves and find out if there is actually a problem, because it might be a government impersonation scam. Sweepstakes or lottery scams. This is the one that I mentioned at the beginning that the director of the CIA fell victim to. This can be, a phone call or an email out of the blue saying that you were randomly picked in a lottery and you're the winner of prize money or a new car or something like that. That was a random drawing of everybody in the state. And in order to did you lose me again?
Yes, Jason.
Okay, I'm not sure why that's happening, but let me try to reshare this presentation again. So as I was saying, with lottery scams, the scammer might say, in order to collect your prize, you just have to pay a small fee, or you have to pay the taxes for your, for the vehicle that you just won, and something
It
like
says
that.
started screen sharing again.
Okay. How about now?
There you go.
Okay. So that's just another thing to be aware of with lottery scams. If it's a good deal today, it'll be a good deal tomorrow. And what you can often do in these cases is you can do a quick Google search of whatever prize or offer that is being sent to you. And oftentimes, you can find on the internet whether or not this is a scam. It's likely, you're not the first person that this scam has been sent to. I actually myself a few years ago received a phone call saying that I won a free cruise, and they said that there were no strings attached, but then at the very end they asked for my credit card number. And so I Googled the name of the company that was offering the free cruise, and there was all this information about how it was a scam. So that's something that you can often do, to protect yourselves. Home repair scams are when you hire somebody to do some work on your house. They may ask for the money up front, and then they never show up to do the job, or they do half of the job and request full payment but never finish it, and you don't hear from them again. My grandfather actually fell victim to one of these, where he needed some work done on his house. He paid some money. They came for one day and they never came back. So this is just another thing to be aware of. Always make sure the contractor that you're working with has good reviews or good ratings, has a good reputation in the community. There's actually a separate DC agency that does home repair type of investigations, which are commonly targeting elders. TV and radio scams. This can be somebody puts out an advertisement in the newspaper or on the radio, offering to, offering any kind of service that is not actually legitimate. So you should just be aware of those. We don't see those, as often, but they do happen. And then lastly, family and caregiver scams, which is also known as financial exploitation. This is just simply a family member or a caregiver that may take advantage of you, gain access to your bank account, and take your money for their own personal gain. So common perpetrators, as I mentioned, family members are maybe the most common, but there's also caregivers, facility bankers. I'm going to talk about a facility banker case in just a second. Family members, friends, fiduciaries, like guardians, legal guardians, conservators can be perpetrators of these crimes. Trusted others, strangers, and strangers that become trusted. I did a case last year where there was an elderly man who fell down on the sidewalk outside of his home, and somebody who lived in the neighborhood helped him up, helped him back to his house, and the elderly man, he didn't really have many friends or family in the area, and he ended up needing to go to the hospital. And he asked this person if he could take care of his rent while he was in the hospital. And the person, he gave this person access to their bank account, and the person did end up paying their rent, but they took additional money out of his bank account on top of that. So, this can happen really to anybody. It can be strangers that become trusted. And that was just one example of that. So how do we identify financial exploitation? Some common red flags are sudden changes to a person's will, power of attorney, or Social Security rep payee status, sudden changes in attorneys, financial advisors, unexplained or unusual bank account activity, new names that have been added to bank accounts, new lines of credit, reverse mortgages, financial activity that the senior could not have undertaken, such as ATM withdrawals when the account holder is bedridden. This is probably the most common one that I see. I had a case where it was a financial exploitation case committed by a home health aide against the person that she was caring for. And the elderly victim was a homebound individual who really did not leave his apartment. And one day he went to make a purchase and he noticed that his bank account was a lot lower than it normally is. And from there, it sort of unraveled where we saw transactions on his bank account in, way out in Maryland, far away from his home, or ATM withdrawals and purchases at stores that we know that he didn't shop at. And this is how we were able to catch the individual, because we found out.
Jason, you went out again.
I guess I need to share my screen again.
Yes.
All right, this might happen every few minutes. I'm not entirely sure why, but I will do my best to power through it. Let's see. Okay.
And I don't know why every time you share it, except for the first time, it says started screen sharing. So
All right. Yes, I'll try again. It's good now?
yeah, I think whatever you press to go to the page, it actually shows up again. But we see it. So thank you so much.
All right. So as I was saying, yeah, this is how we ended up catching the perpetrator in this home health aid exploitation case, because we found that the stores that we saw transactions at were stores that were located near the home of the aide, and we actually had her on ATM camera, withdrawing the victim's money. And actually, he was under the impression, sometimes he would ask for a little bit of cash, like $20 at a time from her from the ATM. And what she was doing was taking out $20 from the ATM, giving him the receipt for that, but then taking out $500 and not showing him those transactions. And, he obviously trusted this person. He completely relied on this aide. And so he wasn't regularly checking his bank account to see everything was, all in order until it was really too late. So some of the best advice that, we give is, be your own, the first line of defense is you, and be your own advocate. And it's always a good idea to just once in a while check your bank account to make sure all those transactions look right and there's not any suspicious activity going on. Other red flags can be, as I said, unnecessary services, goods, or subscriptions. Physical injuries on a person can be indications that not only are they being physically abused, but possibly financially abused. we see that physical abuse can go hand in hand with financial abuse as well. So how do we protect ourselves from these types of scams? The best advice, if you're getting one of these sort of unsolicited phone calls, just hang up is really the best advice we can give. Hang up the phone. Sometimes if a deal sounds too good to be true, it is. And if you think that this might be legitimate, you can always look up the number for the company. You can see if it's a scam or not, and you can call them back, because oftentimes if somebody's calling you out of the blue for one of these offers or asking for money, it may not be legitimate. Resist the pressure to act quickly. These scammers are always gonna be hurrying you to turn over your information. They're not going to let you get off the phone if they're trying to scam you. So, and they're always going to say, this is a limited time deal. This is going to go away. If you hang up, we're going to have to call the next person. Like I said, if it's a good deal today, it's a good deal tomorrow. So that should really be a red flag. If they're pressuring you to act very quickly, that should just give you pause for a second. Just also keep in mind that these people are, unfortunately, they are professional scammers. A lot of them are people that are overseas. They have scripts that they follow, and they are ready for any argument that you might have that this is a scam. So that's why it's very important to protect yourselves in any manner that you can. Really, just having knowledge of these scams, I think, is one of the most important things you can do. Just being aware that they exist so you can identify them in the future. Never send money or personal information to unverified sources. A huge red flag is if somebody asks you to wire money or send money via Western Union. That is often a red flag that this is a scam. Because one
Hey,
Yep. Once that money is sent via wire, it's almost impossible to get back once it gets picked up. So never send money to sources that you don't know, if you don't know the person on the other end. Is the PowerPoint showing here?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Another red flag is if somebody asks you to send money through cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. If you hear any of those terms, don't send any money. Don't deal in cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. It's another way that hackers and scammers, another method of payment that they use that is untraceable, that they use to sort of get away with these crimes. So that should also be a red flag. For tech support scams, use up-to-date antivirus software in your computers, enable pop-up blockers, never open any attachments from suspicious emails or click on any links that may be from unverified sources. Hackers and scammers will often send emails that look like they're coming from legitimate businesses or from a bank, let's say. But if you actually look at the email address that it's coming from, there might be just one letter that's different from the official, email address. Or if it's, it could be coming from a .com email address instead of a .gov email address, if they're saying that they're from the government. So just check the email that it's being sent to and make sure it's actually from the email of the business. And again, like I said, monitor your accounts and personal information for any type of suspicious activity. It's always a good idea to just look over your bank statement every once in a while to make sure everything is in order. So what I have up on the screen here now is a case that I prosecuted a couple of years ago. It was an elder financial exploitation scam that occurred actually in a nursing home in DC, where the defendant, her name was Valerie Williams, was employed as the facility banker. which was essentially the person who controlled all the residents' money. So residents who lived there, their bank accounts were on file with the facility, and if somebody wanted to take out money, they would go to the banker in the facility, sign a withdrawal slip, and they were allowed to take up to $70 per day out of their accounts. And what this person ended up doing was forging the signatures of 11 different residents on these withdrawal slips and taking their money. Many of these people actually could not even sign their own names or get out of bed. And it didn't get noticed until one of the family members came in one day and checked and saw that their relative's account was much lower than usual. And it sort of all unraveled from there. In total, she stole about over $7,000. And as I mentioned, these residents were only allowed to take $70 per day. So if you do the math, that means that she forged these signatures over 100 times to take money from these individuals. But she was prosecuted in this case and ordered to pay back all the money that she stole. One of the abilities that we have as a prosecutor's office is to not only get justice for our victims, but we can often get restitution of any money that was stolen and get that paid back as part of the prosecution. But also, if the person is working in the healthcare industry, we actually have the ability to contact the Center for Medicaid and also the Department of Health and Human Services and have that person be excluded from working in any type of federally funded healthcare facility, which is, almost all of them. So that's one of the best tools that we have at our disposal to, stop people from committing these crimes and make sure that they don't work in this industry for, a long period of time where they can be exposed to more victims. Up here is another case, another press release for a case that I indicted this summer or just a month or two ago that involved a father and daughter who engaged in a scheme to petition the DC Superior Court into becoming this person's guardians and conservators. So this is a case about a woman who she had an accident where she fell on the DC Metro and was injured, and she was brought to a rehabilitation and nursing facility. When she got there, they were not able, the people who worked there could tell that she had some cognitive decline, and they had trouble identifying family members for her and any of her information. Well, these two very distant relatives came forward. It was actually the woman's ex-husband's stepson and that person's daughter. And they came forward and filed a petition with the court to become her legal guardians and conservators, and appeared in front of a judge and said, we're so glad that you found our long lost grandmother. We want to bring her back to our home in Maryland and have her live with us. We just need to gain, guardianship and conservatorship over her finances so we can have the money to transfer her and to, set her up at home. And the court thought, well, this is a great, happy story. This is what we want. Family members, coming forward. And as I was saying, as soon as they were granted guardianship and conservatorship, they ceased communicating with the court and with the facility and proceeded to drain this person's bank account. So this is, another, very sad example of, exploitation that can occur between family members as well. And that case is actually still pending, and we'll see what happens with that later this year. Okay, is my screen back up?
It says started screen sharing.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn now to criminal negligence, or also known as neglect. This is when somebody who has a duty to provide care or services to another person willfully fails to discharge that duty, and it results in some type of injury or criminal negligence of the victim. These cases are a lot harder to prove for us because we're trying to prove that something that should have happened did not happen. I think some of the most common examples of this are people that are that may be in facilities or in nursing homes, and they are not receiving proper care. I think like receiving getting bed sores from not being properly taken care of and turned over is a very common example of criminal negligence that we see. So this is also just something to be aware of, and I'll go through some sort of red flag indicators of criminal neglect, which can be if a person has a poor appearance or hygiene, or is sort of living in unsanitary conditions, being in soiled bedding for an extended period of time, or soiled clothing, untreated physical problems such as bed sores, unsafe living conditions. These are all examples of neglect. It rises to criminal neglect when this is actually being done, willfully and by somebody who has a duty to provide these cares and services. But criminal negligence is something, something that our office is starting to take a look at, because there are a lot of facilities in DC that are short-staffed, and some people may not be getting the care that they should be getting. And we're always looking out to whether or not something more could have been done for a person if they have been injured in any way as a result of criminal negligence. So I'm going to turn now to physical abuse, which we define under DC law as criminal abuse of a vulnerable adult or elderly person. A person is guilty of one of these crimes if they inflict or threaten to inflict any kind of physical pain or injury by hitting, slapping, kicking, pinching, pulling hair. Really, it can come in any form whatsoever. It could also take the form of threats and repeated or malicious statements that may be considered harassing to an individual, as well as imposing unreasonable confinement on somebody. Sexual abuse, which I'll just touch on briefly, is any staff member, employee, contract employee, consultant, anybody who works at a hospital, facility, group home, who engages in any type of sexual act or sexual touching of a patient, ward, client is guilty of first-degree sexual abuse. And what's important to note here is that consent is not a defense. I actually had one of these cases last year where a contractor at a facility engaged in sex with one of the patients who lived there. And although, the defendant claimed that it was consensual, that this person had been attracted to him and had been, I guess, flirting with him. But what he didn't realize is this person actually suffered from various, cognitive issues. And once he was caught and, the victim was interviewed, she didn't even know that this had taken. Okay. And I'm back. All right. Some red flag indicators of physical abuse can be a person being fearful around a particular person, injuries that do not match the explanation given, someone saying, they have a black eye, but they're saying they, fell down the stairs, just kind of making excuses that may not match the type of injury that they have. Symptoms of anxiety, depression, or confusion, withdrawal from family members or friends, broken bones, sprains, dislocations, broken eyeglasses. Also, a caregiver's refusal to allow a person to see the elder alone. Uh, we'll often see if there's abuse that is being committed by a family member or some type of caregiver who is in the home all the time, and if anyone wants to check on this person, to see if they're okay, the perpetrator oftentimes will not want someone to be alone in the room with the victim, so they could tell their story of what's going on. So that is another just red flag to watch out for, if you suspect someone's being physically abused. So what do we do about all of these crimes if you or someone becomes a victim? There are tons of resources out there and agencies that you can call to report this type of thing. One of them is the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, which is the unit that I am a part of. So a little bit about what's also known as the MAFUCU. So the Medicaid program, not to be confused with Medicare, which is health insurance for individuals 65 years of age or older. Medicaid is health insurance for low-income individuals and people who meet a certain income threshold. That was first created in 1965, and when it was first put in place, fraud ran rampant throughout nursing homes and other healthcare facilities. And there really wasn't a mechanism in place to combat the Medicaid fraud that was going on, which is why the first Medicaid Fraud Control Unit was created in 1977. The first one was in New York, and now they are actually in all 50 states, as well as other territories. And so since then, the MAFUCU has been really at the forefront of combating not only healthcare fraud, but also the abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation cases that I've been discussing. MAFUCUs are made up of really investigators, auditors, agents, prosecutors such as myself. We work closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, Protective Services, the long-term care. So the MAFUCU is located inside of the DC Office of the Inspector General here in this state, although it appears in usually the Office of the Attorney General in many other states. I just realized my camera is not on, so I'm going to turn that back on.
Let's try it off. Maybe that will help with the connection, Jason.
Okay, no problem. So some common examples of Medicaid or Medicare fraud that we often prosecute and investigate. This type of fraud is often committed by providers of Medicaid and Medicare. We don't prosecute beneficiaries of Medicaid and Medicare, but some common fraud schemes include billing for services not provided, double billing, billing for more hours that there are in a single day. I mean, what it used to be is home health fraud was one of the biggest types of fraud schemes that we had in the district a few years ago. And this was where there were numerous home health agencies who were, billing Medicaid, saying that they provided services to an individual or a patient for, 40 hours a week, 80 hours a week, but in fact, they were not actually showing up to the home. Oftentimes, the beneficiary, the patient, was sometimes receiving kickback payments from the aide to sign off on their hours of service. Like, for example, an aide would come to somebody's house and say, "Hey, I'll give you $100 a week if you sign my timesheet saying that I worked here for 40 hours. And a lot of people, thought, well, I don't really need an aide. I can take care of myself. And, these are also, a lot of them are low income individuals. So, this could be a lot of money to them. So what we saw was, beneficiaries were often in on these schemes, although we did not prosecute those individuals. We only go after the providers of Medicaid. But that's just one classic example of billing for services, medical services that are not provided. We also see cases involving substitution of generic drugs. So that's where a doctor or a pharmacy a doctor may prescribe you like the name brand of a particular drug, but they provide you with the generic like CVS version or Walgreens version of the medication, but they bill Medicaid for the expensive name brand version. Billing for unnecessary services or tests. This is actually one that can affect you as a patient or of these services. The example that I like to give is, you go to the dentist, and let's say you have a cavity that needs to be taken care of, and you get that cavity taken care of, but the dentist actually bills for a full tooth replacement. Then let's say 6 months later, you need to go back and you actually need to get that tooth completely removed. And your insurance now denies the claim, saying, well, you already had this tooth removed. And now you have to fight with the insurance company about, the medical service that you were provided, because there were unnecessary services or tests that were being billed for, or services that were not actually performed. So it's always a good idea to check. Oftentimes when you receive a medical service, you get an explanation of benefits. It's always a good idea to check that explanation to make sure that you actually received the services that your insurance company was billed for. So we get our referrals from many different sources. They come from nursing homes and other medical providers, social workers, the DC Long-Term Care Ombudsman and Adult Protective Services, other district agencies, family members. There are also a list of people under DC law that are required to report instances of abuse, neglect, or exploitation to the authorities. So some of the most common ones include a person's guardian or conservator, healthcare administrators, licensed health professionals, police officers, bank managers. If bank employees suspect any kind of suspicious financial activity, they're required to report that to law enforcement, and social workers as well. Just a little bit about the types of cases that we cover. We are required to investigate any of these allegations that occur in any type of healthcare facility, which is going to be, your hospitals, assisted living facilities, nursing homes, or boarding care facilities, which is basically any type of inpatient setting. Our jurisdiction was also actually expanded a couple of years ago to include services that are provided in the home, since that has been something that's been on the rise in the last few years, where people are receiving medical services either through aides or whatnot in the home. So Congress actually expanded our powers to investigate cases of abuse and exploitation that are occurring inside the home that are committed by a caregiver. But in all instances, even if it's a case that we don't have jurisdiction to do, or if we feel like it doesn't rise to the level of a criminal case, we're required to refer that complaint out to another agency, either for civil or administrative action. And here's a sort of a list of resources that I have on the screen here. I would encourage everyone to take a picture of this. It's just a list of numbers that you can call for various types of services and resources that exist out here. For reporting complaints, Adult Protective Services is often one of the first agencies that are called. There's MPD. If it's an emergency, of course, call 911. The Office of the Attorney General has an elder justice section that civilly handles issues relating to financial exploitation, or getting a person, an emergency guardian put in place, or removing a caregiver from somebody's home. There are various victim advocacy and legal services that exist out there too. The Network for Victim Recovery of DC is an agency that can provide sort of therapeutic services and advocacy to victims of crime. If you become a victim of crime, this is a good agency to contact to get any kind of to have questions answered. They can also help you file for like protective orders against somebody who may be abusing you or taking advantage of you. The District Alliance for Safe Housing is another agency that can provide transitional housing to you if you are living with somebody who is taking advantage of you, and you don't feel safe there. They can help provide housing for you, transitional housing, until you find another place to live. The long-term care ombudsman is another great resource that advocates for seniors in our community. And of course, my agency, which is the Office of the Inspector General's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. I have up on here, this is our hotline that you can always call, or you can email me directly with any type of complaints. We're always going to do our due diligence and look at these cases and investigate them. And if it's a case that we ultimately can't handle, it doesn't just stop with us. We'll make sure it gets into the right agency's hands for action. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have. I know this was a lot of information, but I certainly open myself up to any questions.
Thank you so much, Jason, for your presentation today. I think the video, turning that off really helped out. You haven't been kicked out yet. So if you could put your presentation back up, just so that way folks can screenshot that
Yes.
slide with your info and with that information. You can, I'll be able to direct the questions, but if you could share your screen again and showcase that information, we would appreciate it.
Yes, no problem. Let me see.
But again, if you have a question for Jason, please raise your hand. But after our questions, make sure you stay on the Zoom in order to fill out a poll to let us know how you felt about today's presentation. So again, thank you, Jason. Again, the hotline number is OIG email is on the screen, and Jason's information is also there on the screen as well. And I recommend for the questions, today, we were talking about a sensitive topic, so I would try to keep your questions general, and anything more specific, you can call the hotline, or you can email the OIG, or you can email Jason specifically. So try to keep the questions general. This session will be posted on our YouTube channel, so please keep that in mind. So any general questions for Jason, and please raise your hand, and we'd love to hear from you. First up is Ms. Doris. Thank you so much for your patience. How are you?
Hi, Jason. Thank you for the orientation and everything today. But I need you to call me because I just been fraud and I don't know how they did it. So can I give you my number in the chat and you can call me?
Yeah, happy to. I'm happy to give you a call, or if you want to send me any information that I can review before we talk, it's totally up to you. But yeah, I'm happy to speak with you offline about something.
they done fraud 3 of my cars that I ain't even never dealt with none of that type of business. So maybe you can help me to resolve that problem.
Sure. Yeah. If that's all right with you, yeah, I'm happy to, if you want to provide me your contact information, we can reach out to you.
Okay, I'm gonna put my phone number in the chat.
Thank you, Ms. Doris. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. Thank you, Mr. Again, and let's try to keep our questions general. Anything more specific, please email Jason at the email there or call the hotline, either number, or you can email the general email as well. So please keep that in mind. Hi, Diane, how are you doing today? Thanks so much for coming on.
Hello. Hi, Jason. Hi, Alex. Uh, Jason, I think I think I was running into a scam. It was for $9.95 Dell, and I went and put all my information. Then I slept overnight and realized this is a scam. So what I did was cancel my credit card and cancel whatever was charged because I knew exactly what was charged within that day. So how come that these agencies are not putting their email address or telephone number on these articles they're supposed to be selling?
So your question was, how come companies are not putting their contact information on?
Yes, if it's legitimate.
Sorry, Jason, you went out for a second. Can you say that again, Diane?
I said, if these companies that offer these prizes are legitimate, how come how come the laws don't require them to put their telephone numbers and email address so we could contact them?
Well, I think the answer to that is they don't want to be contacted because they don't want to, because they are running a scam and they don't want to be caught.
Oh,
I think, I think a lot of these, if it's a company that is not legitimate and they're offering some type of scam, it's likely that they're not going to provide you with, their contact information because it's not a real company. And their job is they are trying to keep you on the phone and get you to turn over your personal information or to send money as quickly as possible. So yes, I think if it's a company that you have not heard of, um, I would definitely, try to look up the company to the best way you can. If you run a search for them to read about them, see if it is actually a legitimate company and what their contact information is.
Oh, Jason, what got me was almost free. I got greedy, and as soon as I got greedy, I knew that had done something wrong. So I did cancel everything, with my credit card company.
Mhm. Well, yeah, that's smart, and that's always a safe option to do, certainly. Or, if you do suspect something like that, contact your bank, call the number that's on your card, and let them know that you think you might have been scammed or that your information might have been compromised, so they can flag any type of suspicious transactions that are occurring.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Diane. Have a great rest of your day. Let's see. Thank you so much again for your questions so far. We have 4 hands up left. And again, just as a reminder, let's try to keep our questions as general as possible. This session will be posted on our YouTube channel for others to view as well. Hi, Greer. How are you doing today?
Hi, Alex. Good afternoon to all. And Jason, your presentation was excellent. It was very helpful and beneficial in many ways, not only for myself, but I know of others. But Jason, this is a general question. If you go to get your eyes examined, and then your insurance covers everything, and then they want to charge you an additional fee to get your prescription for your eyeglasses, is that on the up and up, or could you clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, I think that's a tough question to answer without looking at, I guess, the services that are being billed or that are being claimed. Um, I think what I would recommend in those situations is to call your insurance company, right, rather than the provider, and see if these services are covered or not. What some providers do that are committing fraud is they do what's called unbundling of services. And what that means is, um, I'll give just a different example. Like if you go to get a surgery done, and as part of the surgery, you get a checkup beforehand, then they give you the anesthesia, then they do the surgery for you, and then they give you some type of prescription medication afterwards. Well, like that could be a situation where all of that is one code that the provider bills to your insurance company, and that includes all of those services. So, you know, they're submitting one claim that includes all that treatment that you received. But sometimes providers will unbundle those where they are individually billing your insurance company for each service that you got. So they might send a separate claim for the checkup you got, a separate claim for the anesthesia, a separate claim for the surgery, and that it's more money that way. So like think of it as they're submitting one claim that is, like a discount because it's everything's bundled together in sort of one claim that they're submitting. And all of that should be covered at once, but they might be, individually billing. So it sounds like that's the kind of situation you're talking about where you might have, received a service that, all should be covered as part of one claim, but you're being billed essentially twice when you should only be billed once. So that's, I think, a question for the insurance company to see if it was actually claimed correctly by your doctor.
Well, this was for eyeglasses. And then after I had gotten the examination and what have you, then they wanted to charge a separate fee for the prescription to get my glasses. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten the prescription. So I did contact my insurance company, and I had them and the billing office on the line at the same time, and I got a reimbursement for that. And then I just changed doctors because I was quite satisfied with the ophthalmologist, but the office, the billing was, to me, was a scam. And they always had a office full of seniors in the office. And so I don't know if all the seniors did that, but I took offense to it. So I definitely got it straightened out. And then I changed doctors. And I changed doctors for the next time around. I wasn't billed. Everything was inclusive. So I was fine about that. Now, one other quick thing. If someone's family member is in the hospital and they've experienced the different things that you've said about the bed sores and all of that, what's the best way that the family can handle that, or who should they go to?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's a huge problem, and it's something that we see all too often. A lot of times, it's simply because a lot of facilities, especially since the pandemic, are short-staffed, and a lot of individuals are not receiving as much care as they maybe should be. So bed sores, it it's often sometimes an indicator that somebody is being neglected, because really, if you're laying in bed for a very long time, you should be rotated or moved about every 2 hours in order to
Right.
prevent bed sores from happening. And if you're not being moved, enough, then that's how the bed sores develop, and they can get worse if they're, untreated or neglected. So it's, I think some of the best things that are to do are just to
Um,
I'm back.
Mhm.
I think just speaking with the doctor or the staff there, and bring up the fact that bed sores are occurring, that this person needs to be rotated more often. Just kind of advocating for your family member is sometimes the best thing to do. There's also something out there called a Hoyer lift, which is a device. Almost think of it like a hammock that can go underneath the person, so they could be lifted off of the bed and not have that sort of pressure from laying in bed all the time. And that's something that the hospital can provide, or that the insurance company can cover to help prevent bed sores from happening. So that would be another, I think, thing to raise with the staff members there.
Jason, how do you spell it? You said Hoyer list?
Yeah, it's Hoyer, Hoyer, and then Lift,
Lift. Okay.
Lift. Yeah.
I'll
So
relate then, because the lady she was working. She was working and she just was on the way to work, I think, and had a stroke, and her family members can't get to her mother and her daughter. And when they are able to get to her, it's just not good. So I just thought about her as you were talking, and I wanted to relay that on to her. So I certainly would relay this information to them to ask about that as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Greer. Again, we're a little over time, so we have 3 hands. So let's again try to keep it, again, general questions, and just keep that in mind. So
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you want to make sure that we get through the hands. So please keep that in mind so we can hear from everyone. Next up is Ms. Brenda. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Jason, good.
Jason, I live in a co-op, a senior low-income equity co-op. They raised our rent to $100. It's a senior citizen building. I can't afford it. And one of the guys came to me and asked me, he said he agreed, he voted for it because he didn't want to. He was too embarrassed not to. And 3 guys called me, and they don't agree with it. And they telling us we cannot do anything because they agreed to it. But I said $100 is too much to go up on the rent. We don't even get $100 a year. We get a few dollars increase, but not $100.
Mm-hmm.
And what can we do about it?
So there are, that's not necessarily something that that my office handles, but there is another office that deals with rent, like unlawful rent increases, or sort of the types of issues that you're talking about. I would try reaching out to it's called the Office of the Tenant Advocate. That's tenant, TENANT.
I know tenant advocate.
Yep, tenant advocate. Yep. So they often can advocate or represent residents who are facing those types of issues from the building, and because there is a cap on rent increases. I know it can't, in a lot of buildings, it can't go up a certain past a certain amount. So that might be a good resource, for you, that you could reach out to, that may be able to, assist.
Is there a number?
I'm trying to look up the number here. Yeah, so you can try calling 202-719-6560. And it looks like, yep, they are open basically 8:45 to 4:45 each day, and they do intake for those types of complaints.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brenda. And again, just as a tip, Google is your friend. Anything that Jason talks about that you want to just do some research, go on Safari on your iPad and search it up, and you can find that information. That's just what I highly recommend, because there is a lot of information that's provided during some of these sessions. Okay. Again, we have 2 hands. Again, please try to keep it general as well, and keep in mind the time. Thank you so much. Hi, Dolores. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing okay. Hi, Jason. How you doing?
Very good. Thanks.
Good. My question is, have you all ever experienced as far as someone being scammed out of losing their home? And by that, I mean someone being able to change your deed on your house without your permission. Have you ever heard anything like that before?
Yes, unfortunately, I have heard that. I have some colleagues over here that have done sort of mortgage fraud type of cases like that. Yeah, it's, I know the recorder of deeds in DC is, the agency that would be receiving any kind of changes in deeds or applications like that. But yeah, do you have like a certain question about it or anything?
No, I was just interested in that because I've heard something like that recently that happened to an individual. And I wanted to know, what can a person do to prevent that from happening to you, to me?
Yeah. Well, certainly if they suspect anything like that, they should reach out to, file a complaint with, I would say with the police. If they're suspecting some type of mortgage fraud or fraud related to their home. And then that case would, get referred to our office. Most likely an investigator would be assigned to it to look into it. So yeah, I would always recommend in those types of situations just to reach out to law enforcement about it. I know I mentioned one of the cases earlier in the presentation was a mortgage, reverse mortgage type of scheme where somebody gained the trust of a senior and had her enter into a reverse mortgage where sort of the bank, pays you on a monthly basis for your home, and the bank starts to own it. So that's just something to watch out for, and I would just recommend contacting law enforcement in those situations.
Okay, but is there something that I can do? Like, for instance, should I be checking on my mortgage every certain amount of time to make sure that I'm the person that owned that, or anyone else who I signed, to prevent this from happening? I was trying to come up with a prevention method for it wouldn't happen.
Yeah. So I don't think that somebody would be able to, unless they were trying to forge your signature or steal your identity and file documents with the government to, take over your house. That kind of thing I think is a little bit more rare. But certainly if you are getting any type of mail that's related to your mortgage or your home, yeah, just make sure you recognize the names that are on it, and that someone's
Okay.
not going to take your identity.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you. So unfortunately, we're out of time for now with Jason and Rob. We still have to complete our poll at the end of the day. So Jason, if you could put your email in the chat in case anyone else would like to email you any questions or any general thoughts or anything about today's session, we would appreciate that. I know hopefully many of us took a screenshot of the contact information for Jason, but thank you so much for also putting that in the chat in case you all have any additional questions. Jason, do you just have any last thoughts or any last tips or tricks or anything that you like to share before we end for the day?
Yeah. So again, if you see something, say something. I think knowledge is power in this case, just being aware of the scams that are out there, the indicators of abuse and neglect and exploitation is, one of the best things that we all can do to protect ourselves from these types of crimes. So, stay informed on what's going on. Be an advocate for yourself. Check your accounts periodically to make sure everything looks in order, and take advantage of all the resources that are out there. You can always email me. I'm happy to put you in touch with the right agency if you're having a certain kind of issue. But really, as it was mentioned, as Alex mentioned, Google is your friend too. You can look up a lot of these companies that may be contacting you, or if you think it's a scam, you can try Googling it and really learn a lot of information and find out for yourself if it is legitimate or not. And just, take advantage of the resources at your disposal. There's a lot of agencies that are working together on these types of issues. We're all fighting the same fight, and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Jason. It can happen to anyone, so utilize the resources and services available around you. So thank you so much, Jason. Let's all thank Jason so much for our session today, and make sure you stay on to complete the poll to let us know how you felt about today's session. Thank you, Jason, and have a great rest of your day.
Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good day, Jason.
Much.
Have a blessed day.
Very much.
Thanks, Jason. Have a good day.
Very good, Jason.
Thank you so much.
you very much.
Thank you all so much. And we're going to end with our poll for the day, but thank you so much for attending our session.